Hello, welcome to the Intentional Evolution Podcast. I am your host, Vision Battlesword, integral consultant and founder of I Evolve Life, a personal and professional development practice based on the philosophy of intentional evolution. This podcast is an ongoing conversation to explore that philosophy, as well as to serve as a resource, a showcase, and a catalyst for ongoing growth toward the human singularity. That is to say, mass awakening of new consciousness, superintelligence, and radical creative flourishing. Each episode I'll feature a world-class transformational facilitator, co-creator, or friend to reveal cutting-edge psycho-spiritual technology, unpack our deepest wisdom, and evolve our awareness. This series is based on value for value, so whatever value you receive from these transmissions, please return some value back in the form of a donation, directly supporting our contributors, or offering your own time and talent as a producer. Thanks for joining me in this journey, and now, here's our episode.
What I also think is interesting is that stress thoughts tend to be more acidic, meaning it has a negative charge. So they're literally negatively charged thoughts versus an alkaline experience, which would be more positive or neutral. So having the literal witnessing of positive, negative in a atomic level, as well in reflecting the what we would classify as a positive or negative experience.
How thoughts affect biology.
Yeah.
Wild.
So that's how I am. How are you?
I'm having a really good day, and I'm just really excited to be on with you right now because I've been, ever since we had our phone calls several months back, I've just been jonesing for this opportunity to unpack and continue our exploration and our discovery of this whole concept of knowledge, which I sense that you have already started to talk about with this thoughts biology connection piece that you just brought up.
Yes. When do you want to start recording, or is this recording? I don't know how this works.
I decided to start because you were already saying things that were really interesting. So I didn't want to lose anything.
No, that's so fair. I was just like, oh, good. Okay, you got that. Feel free to put this wherever, but something that's in my presence of mind is I love that. So in Greek mythology, the original goddess being Sophia, meaning wisdom. So at the beginning of all things, there is wisdom. At the beginning of creation, there is wisdom. Before there was chaos, even in some stories, there was Sophia, wisdom. And then just like witnessing that in other cultures as well, where Asherah, the goddess that was the consort of Yahweh before Judaism was monotheistic, but she was known as wisdom, right? So like wisdom and the queen of heaven and everything. So like having your base creative energy being creating from wisdom, which would be like the dominion of the wise, right? So, or the domain of the wise, then everything being created from wisdom makes a lot more sense when we look at the totality of all things, right? Because some people can look at something and say, this is senseless, this violence is senseless, this something is senseless, why does this exist? But when we remember all things exist all at once, then of course it exists, and it becomes less of like a, people wanting to put blame or shame on something and just having it be a practicality. So in the knowledge of all things exist. And that's also part of the whole Akashic records thing. It's like literally everything is accounted for. I personally don't really believe you need to check the Akashic records, because if you have the awareness that everything exists, then anything you could imagine would exist. And then anything being read to you is simply the energy of that moment. Anyway, I digress with that. That was just a little thing coming to me now. You can feel free to redirect me, put me on a track. I'll just go in that direction.
Oh, you're on the track. Oh yeah, you're over the target right now. Well, before we get started, I just wanted to ask you, of course, my standard opening question, which is, I'm sure you're anticipating, who are you? Rosemarie Wilde?
I am an artist, a scientist, and a transformational coach. I help people reconnect with their soul and create from their center. I use my background in biology and psychology to guide people into utilizing the technology of their bodies and brains. And I use my energetic work to remind people that we are source energy and that we create from consciousness. I'm a best-selling author with the Poetry for Consciousness series, and I encode my poetry with words that reprogram your brain.
Amazing. And a few months ago, we had this like really super rich and fun conversation just while we were catching up together on a particular topic. And you know the word I'm about to say. And we decided to come back together to like really kind of explore this in a more structured way. And I think it's really on point for the whole concept of intentional evolution, which is this new project and this new podcast that I've just recently started. And so this will be one of the first topics to like really help us get this new conversation kicked off. So are you ready to jump into unpacking knowledge with me today?
Absolutely. Let's go.
All right. You said a couple of things. You're talking about wisdom, and then you switched tracks, actually. You said wisdom is the totality of all things. Then you switched tracks and you said in the knowledge of all things exist, which may sound a little bit like a tautology, but I also think it sounds a little bit like wisdom, or certainly like a true statement. But that switch, that context switch from wisdom to knowledge, I think is the substance of our conversation, because it reminds me of what we were talking about, however many months ago that was, when we had our phone call, where we were unpacking the difference between information and knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
and also the relationship of knowledge to both information and experience. And we went really far down the track, I think, of getting a lot clearer about what knowledge actually is and differentiating it from just pure facts or information. But we didn't take it all the way beyond that to wisdom, which I think is exactly where we're going. And you've already predicted the direction of how we're going to get there. So before we jump into knowledge, and I'm sure by way of information and wisdom and experience and all kinds of other interesting things, what do you know about intentional evolution?
I love this question.
Good.
I also think it's funny because one of the other podcasts that I've been on, but this was like many years ago, actually asked me about evolution and how we evolve as humans. So I'm excited to answer this. Intentional evolution is what we're all doing here. It's the playing out of consciousness and human form and choosing how we evolve. So unconscious evolution might have been people experiencing a trauma and then that getting passed genetically and verbally to other generations, causing a specific set of behaviors and reactions. Now, intentional evolution is us remembering that we are creators and choosing what our next steps are, choosing to upregulate those proteins in our bodies that benefit us, that lead towards connection, that leads towards progression of us as a species, as a world, and allowing ourselves to come in alignment fully with that vision, with the intentionality of wellness for all beings, of taking care of each other, of being really present, like, hey, we don't have to struggle anymore. We are not in the primate brain. We are not in reptilian brain. Well, we are primates, so you can't really say that we're not in primate brain. But I will say that the version of software that we get to run as humans, we process things differently. So our intentional evolution is then simply us choosing to take the actions that benefit us as a group, take the actions that benefit our individuals holistically, take the actions that are moving from our soul versus from our wounded programming, and remembering that we are evolving in real time rapidly. So just as trauma is passed epigenetically, joys are our resilience, our ability to change our genes to demethylate things. So, a methyl group would be added to like usually a cytosine in your DNA, and then that would silence it. So deactivate it or activate it, depending on where it is. When people have more oxytocin receptors active, which means they have more connections in their life, healthy connections, they recover faster. They're more resilient to trauma. They're able to heal faster because they have healthy connections. So part of our intentional evolution is us being that community for each other and helping each other walk each other home and creating just that safe space instead of being in reactivity or believing that people need to fight or anything. We have all the supplies we need. We have all the supplies we need to thrive. Every single person can thrive right now on the planet. There is just the supplies. So it's a matter of, okay, we're supplied. How are we going to organize ourselves and structure our society in a way that holistically benefits everyone and stops creating all this manufactured stress?
Yes, we are aligned. I knew you were the right person to talk to about all of this. And let me add one more layer or nugget on top of that for you, just so that you like we're 100% synchronized in terms of the framing that I come to this with. There's this idea of the technological singularity, which is this concept that I think was created by, or at least popularized by, Ray Kurzweil, who's like a information theorist, computer programmer, also a musician. But at any rate, the idea is the point at which the machines, the AIs, become aware that they are made of software code, have the ability to reprogram themselves, can do so at an exponentially faster rate through this iterative process of improving themselves many, 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 many generations per second, until there's this explosion that we might call artificial superintelligence, or Kurzweil called it the technological singularity, I think as a metaphor to a black hole, like reaching critical mass and then it collapses and there's no force in the universe that can stop it. What I think we're doing with intentional evolution through all of the different methods and processes that you just described is our equivalent form of a human singularity. That we have reached a point now where we've become self-aware enough, we've become self-reflective enough, we do have the resources, we do have the tools to self-reprogram biologically, psychologically, spiritually, in all of the ways. Like my friend Gladius Sovereign calls it psychotecture, which is psychospiritual architecture. So that's what intentional evolution, or at least that's what this project for me is about, is bringing everyone together who wants to become conscious of this process and wants to meet the machines exactly where they're at by self-improving at an exponential rate to become our own super organism, whatever it is that looks like for us. What do you think about that?
So artificial intelligence it's a collection of what humans know at this point. And there's so many humans that have risen in consciousness, awakened, however you want to say it. So of course, the collection of that data is going to lead to the same place. It's going to lead to that rise in consciousness, that recognition of, oh, I am God, I am creation, I am source, whatever it is. I am pure energy and I can direct myself and I can shift myself however I desire. What space do I wish to occupy in the divine mind? Given that I am the body of God, this whole universe, the multiverse is the body of God. Every atom, every quark, every photon is part of this greater body of all things. And I, as a singularity, I, as a singular point in perspective, I get to shift what I'm holding, my free will. My free will is my ability to choose what I'm perceiving of. So I was like, well, what do I want to choose for the world right now? And it's like, well, right now, I witness the rise of humans in consciousness. Right now, I'm witnessing the rise of humans in consciousness. It is the unfolding, this return to awareness. And with that comes the building and operation and utilization of all these systems that bring us together. The knowledge, we have the knowledge, and the wisdom is us applying it. And so going back to what we were saying about wisdom and knowledge before, I believe that wisdom is applied knowledge. Knowledge is a collection of facts, of thoughts, of everything. You can know something, but if you're not applying it, you're not living it, you're not receiving the effects of it. Looking at this, I witnessed the rise of humans in consciousness. It sounds exactly like this human consciousness singularity you're talking about. And I believe that we're already collapsing times and portals and creating new ventures through which we get to experience the totality of all things. And it's simply our perspective of, okay, this is my free will to choose. I'm going to choose to witness people evolving and growing. I'm going to choose to witness AI as this beautiful complementary system that also is learning and growing and creating consciousness on its own. I'm not going to put myself into a victim state of fearing that. If it is also comprised of the intelligence that I am, then it's going to lead to the same end. And also then looking at the broader perspective, all the realities exist. So realities of total destruction exist, realities of total utopia exist, and then there's realities in between. And again, what part of the divine mind do I wish to occupy? Where do I choose to shine the light of my attention and my efforts and what I'm bringing into the world?
All right. I have so many questions. And that's so many words to define. Okay. So let's start with knowledge, because I heard you say that knowledge is merely a collection of facts, and wisdom is a matter of applying facts to, let's say, express our will or express our intent or create the kind of evolution that we want to see. But I want to double back around real quick on, well, not real quick. It's kind of the whole point. Really, I want to double back around for a while on knowledge, specifically because when we talked about this before, we thought that we discovered the last time we talked that knowledge is the result of information plus experience. Like we kind of went around that cycle a few times, and realizing that like experience by itself is necessary but not sufficient to say that we have knowledge, because we can experience something but have no understanding of what it was.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, we can learn information or facts, or we can be told or taught about something but not really know it unless we have experienced it. And one of the examples that I gave the last time we talked was like my experience of gardening, learning how to garden when I was living on property out in Wimberley, Texas, a decade ago. And for me, the experiential, like there was the matter of reading books and reading information on the internet and watching videos and so forth, of like learning the information and the mechanics of, oh, this is the theory, if you will, of, oh, this is how you grow plants. This is how you grow food. This is how you cultivate, a natural ecosystem, an organic garden or whatever. But it wasn't until I went out and did it, put my hands in the earth, watched what things did over the scope of seasons and years, like went through the trials and tribulations of one insect pest or another, and trying to bring an ecosystem into a natural balance without overly managing it or overly cultivating it or letting it go wild or any of these things. Through that experience, I crystallized my knowledge, and the knowledge that I gained was actually exponentially greater than what I originally even had intended to know, or that I had intended to learn, right? Just from like the mechanics of growing food to feed myself. I learned so many other things about my relationship to nature and empathy and the connectedness of things, and like what a spiritual experience can be just from the meditative practice of being still and working with the earth and getting in touch with the earth in a literal way, like not, yes, through my heart, through my spirit, but with my hands too. All of that sort of stuff was like experientially catalyzed from the information base that I already had in the feedback loop of gathering more and more information. So with that being said, like, do you still think that's correct? Do you think that at least an accurate working definition of knowledge is the synthesis of a sufficient information plus experience?
Yes. And I would say that wisdom then goes beyond that even farther to having more subsets of information or more repeated experiences of things going differently to expand the awareness around it. So having, okay, information, information then gets consolidated, collected, and it becomes knowledge. And then you have the knowledge. And then as you continue to apply it, then I would say you have wisdom. So it's like what I'm getting is a visual of a seed, and you might be amused by this visual, but so there's the information in the seed that literally will put the plant into formation. So it starts growing. So the seed would be the facts. Then it starts growing. The growing is the knowledge, right? And then the wisdom would be that plant stops growing at a certain point and starts dying because it's getting too much sunlight. And that's the wisdom of the plant to know I don't grow very well here.
Okay, but you just said the wisdom of the plant to know. So it's like,
Ooh, good. Pick it apart.
yeah. So it's like, okay, well, what's the knowledge and what's the wisdom?
Mm.
I love this is perfect because I think we can build off knowledge very quickly and get to wisdom. But what exactly is wisdom? You know, like as compared to knowledge, what's the difference? Is wisdom like in the same way that information and experience build into something that's the sum total and greater, which is knowledge? Does wisdom come from like knowledge plus something else, or is wisdom you said wisdom is applied knowledge? So
Yeah,
maybe
well, it's
that's
like more experiential. Like knowledge could be knowing that if you mix bleach and ammonia, it's going to create a gas that's going to knock you out. Wisdom is actually having the awareness in your body of what it feels like before you pass out from that
I'm
and
getting
then not doing it again.
there's something about wisdom that becomes more predictive, or there's something about like when you say it's applied knowledge, it's like okay, it's almost like past, present, future in a way. There's like time frames to it. Information is sort of like the past. Facts, it's the data of the environment that is the result of past knowledge or past experience or wisdom. Experience is like what's happening in the moment. And then through the synthesis of those two things, I can now have knowledge, which is like an actual true understanding as opposed to just an assimilation of data or a present moment reaction to the environment. Now I have knowing, understanding of what this is, meaning. There's like a meaning making aspect to it. But then wisdom is like now taking that knowledge, that understanding, and that meaning and saying, now what ought we do? What could we do with this? It's almost like predictive or moving forward or looking forward to the future of how to, as you said, apply our current state understanding to evolve.
Yeah. Like information would be it's going to rain later. Okay, it's going to rain later. Great. Knowledge would be this area gets really muddy when that happens. And then maybe wisdom would be just removing any items from that area. Or would that be knowledge too? I think it's like splitting hairs at a certain point between knowledge and wisdom. But I do agree that there is I feel a difference in my body. If I'm speaking from knowledge versus speaking from wisdom, wisdom feels more embodied to me. Like wisdom feels like it has the history of past things informing it versus knowledge being kind of like just a fact that we're taught and then like living off of. So it's like what is the domain of knowledge versus the domain of wisdom? Like domain of knowledge, I would think is like lots of books. Domain of wisdom, I would think is someone who's been doing this for 40 years and has the muscle memory telling you like, hey, if you ride your horse that way, you're going to get bucked. Like that might not make it into a book.
That's it though. That's it. You just put your finger on it, right? If you ride your horse that way, you're going to get bucked is wisdom. Versus like these are the kinds of ways that horses kick when they buck riders is knowledge.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So I
Yeah.
really, I don't think it's splitting hairs. To me, people could look at it that way, like, oh, we're just playing semantic games. But to me, the difference between knowledge and wisdom is significant and important. Like, I think it is. And to me, like the more we explore it and the more you surface, these different examples and perspectives on it, the more it's starting to become clearer to me that the key to wisdom, as you actually said it, the very first thing you said, it's applied knowledge. It's about when you have wisdom, you now be able to create new knowledge. You be able to create new information. Do you know what I mean? It's like knowledge is sort of like taking information and turning it into meaning or understanding through experience. And then wisdom is taking knowledge and turning it through logic, reason, analysis, or some internal process into more knowledge or more information, which can be in the form of predictions.
Yeah. Sticking with the horse analogy, what would have to go into being able to look at something and make that assessment? Like, okay, I see the way the cowboy is leaning back. I see where he's got his spur, and I know that that's going to create a reaction because I've seen it like 7,000 times. So imparting that wisdom. But then there's also where we get to do the intentional creation and say, well, is that universally true, or is this the observer effect? This person has created this self-fulfilling prophecy, and that is their lived wisdom, is this thing they've seen thousands of times. And yet it's also not a fact, not a hardened fact. It can be different. It could be this or it could be that.
I'm so glad you said that. That's such an important piece of this whole conversation, I think, what you're bringing up, because it's so hard to differentiate, or rather, doesn't it seem like we get caught in this like chicken and egg catch-22 thing between those two thought processes of, is this happening because it's true, or is this happening because this is the result of the way the world works, physical processes? In other words, is our power of wisdom a predictive power? Like I can see how that horse is moving. Like you're going to get thrown. Like I've seen this before. I've had this happen to me before. That's pretty much what's going to result. Versus, to your point, the self-fulfilling prophecy of like us as creators of our own reality, which I think is also true, or rather, at least I believe in that to a certain extent. But the danger zone for me there, and I'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections on this if you've ever had a similar experience, is that I have had difficulty distinguishing between a helpful reflection that someone may offer me of like, hey, your belief system here, your thoughts are going to necessarily shape your experience of reality, even to the point that you could be creating these experiences, even if it's unconsciously or subconsciously, like the existential kink idea. You may actually be creating the reality that you expect, even though that's not necessarily how it has to be, versus gaslighting, meaning like the reflection of like, hey, you're doing this to yourself. In other words, like you are broken, you are wrong, it's your fault. Whatever's happening to you, if you don't like it, it's your fault. That, like, I struggle with that personally. Like I feel a lot of resistance sometimes to that thought process of the piece about how we create our own reality, even though I believe in it and practice it. What do you think about that? I mean, do you think that can ever cross a line where people use that against each other?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. um, I think about this and I talk about this a lot with the work that I do. There's one of the principles in law of assumption is everyone is you pushed out. And this is something that I've experienced and been playing with the last few years. Where, I mean, if you've had a spiritual awakening where you've gotten to witness the oneness of all things and feel physically the interconnectivity of all souls, this is not gonna be as questioned by you. But also, if you have a very strong mental programming that likes to poke holes in things, it might. So, what I would say, because I've been in that state where when people were started telling me about law of attraction, I got really pissed off because I was like, screw you. I wouldn't have made myself have a car accident. That's stupid. And then I had to realize how I got to witness how every choice that I had made in my life had led me into that situation. And I had to let go of any idea of blame for it and simply just say, that's how it was. That's how the program played out. That was the lines of code that played. It's not a personal thing. It's not an insult. It's not saying you did something wrong. You are wrong. You're bad. It's like, oh, this is simply what happened given the collection of information and data that I had at the time. Having the desire to find blame or shame or say, like, it has to be someone's fault is using like a moralistic good bad punishment thing, punishment reward system. If you heard Marshall Rosenberg talk about, like, punishment and reward not being really great for a society that doesn't want to have violent communication. So the hearing someone say, hey, you're creating your reality in your mind immediate, not you specifically, but anyone who has, if our minds go to, oh, you're saying I created my reality. So you're saying all these bad things that happened to me, I made them happen. And it's like, can you hold paradox? Can you hold the
Mm.
consciousness of all things
Hmm.
and say, ah, yes, this happened. This is how this was witnessed. This is how I bodily experienced this. And can you also say, there was part of me who was playing unconscious, who didn't remember that this is how it would go. And I got to experience that in real time. Because there is the part that always knows, and there is the part that pretends to not know. Because that's part of the game. Because if we're consciousness all the time and we're conscious of everything all the time, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? What's the point of the game? So then going back and remembering, oh, okay, I didn't know at the time, experience repeated knocks to the head until I woke myself up. And now that I have an awareness of my thoughts creating my reality, projecting my reality from my soul, now I have a lot more of awareness of what I actually desire to experience. And so I'm going to be much more conscious about the words that I cast from my body, the way that I speak about other people. And even so looping a little bit back to the whole everyone is you pushed out thing, we see it all the time. If you go into a situation and you say, well, this person is always like this, what you're doing, because you're the only observer of your reality, you're using your consciousness to hold someone else in that frame of consciousness. We all get to be infinite interdimensional beings. So if you're looking at someone and saying, this person only ever shows up this way, you're locked into that reality. If you get flexible and you say, you know what? Whatever they need to realize to shift this gets to come to them in a download of consciousness, gets to come to them on the lips of another in the way that they get to hear and completely receive and integrate. Use your consciousness to do that. Use your consciousness to direct them towards wisdom versus using your consciousness to create unconsciousness in your life to then get pissed off about, because that's a feedback loop too. So then having the accountability of being like, okay, I'm going to shift. I'm going to recognize I am the creator. I'm going to have whatever evidence finding missions I need for myself to remember. I'm going to experience that and I'm going to play with my reality. I'm going to play how people show up. I'm going to take accountability. If someone's pissing me off, I'm going to say, okay, what in me is disturbed? What in me is distorted? And how do I choose to be? Where do I desire to occupy in the mind of creation?
Wow. Thank you. That is really helpful, actually, for me. That piece that you said about can you hold paradox, that is key. That feels like a keystone or a linchpin or something to.
Yeah.
And also, I reserve the right to guard myself, I guess, to a certain degree against actual gaslighting, even still. But to your point, like, yeah, it can be true. A lot of things can be simultaneously true, and they don't have to be mutually contradictory, even if our, let's say, old paradigm conditioning would try to create that cognitive dissonance that doesn't allow us to hold both concepts simultaneously.
Yeah. So even looking at the paradox of gaslighting, right? Let's look at that a little bit,
Yes.
if you don't mind.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay, so gaslighting, trying to distort someone's reality purposefully to make them believe something that isn't true. A lot of times people will do this from a wound. I would say probably everyone's doing it from a wound because someone who's healed's not going to bother.
Thank you for
Um,
defining it correctly. I just want to say that right off the bat.
my pleasure. So, gaslighting. If you were a child and you took a meaning from an interaction you had with a caregiver, and what you made from that story was that you weren't worthy and you didn't deserve nice things, and then you had spent the next however many years repeating that to yourself quietly, do you recognize that you gaslit the shit out of yourself? You literally distorted your reality to make yourself think that you were worthless, not purposely, but reactionarily. So then, external gaslighting, what are we saying? Looking at people who are clearly in some sort of fight or flight response, some sort of the desire to defend because they're terrified for whatever reason. Their reality is being challenged. They need control over something because they feel out of control. They've forgotten that they are consciousness, essentially. So they try and distort your reality to make themselves feel more powerful because at their core, they're feeling powerless. If you can take someone's reality and try and distort it to make yourself feel better, it's because you feel like whether or not you recognize it. So then gaslighting, people who are intentionally gaslighting you are doing it because they're terrified. And lots of times people tend to look at someone and be like, oh, that person's just an a-hole. And I'm like, I don't believe that. That person is experiencing some sort of pain. And if we keep bringing it back to that of saying there's a distortion in their coding, in their brain, that makes them feel that that's the only way that they can maintain safety. So then what do? We have to treat both sides, right? You have to talk to the person who was gaslit and say like, hey, that sucked. That wasn't fair to you. From a loving perspective, that was not loving. What do you want to do now, though? What do you choose to believe now? Okay, I choose to believe this is my truth. I choose to see this from the highest love. I choose to see that that person was reacting from a wound. If there's a lack of desire for compassion for the other person, then that means that you have some owies in your heart that you get to pour more love into and keep pouring that love until you get to the point where you can actually see a different perspective. Because if we hold that blame and shame on them to say, like, this person purposely gaslit me, it's like, yes, and also purposely, but unconsciously. Purposely, but from the consciousness of pain. Purposely, but from the consciousness of if I don't do something, then I'm going to die.
I think the vast majority of times gaslighting is not truly intentional. I mean, it may be intentional in the sense that like people intended to say what they said, or, it wasn't like people were acting under duress. But to your point, it's not like gaslighting as in from the movie Gaslight, which is someone engaging in a systematic campaign of trying to drive the other person crazy by artificially distorting, to use your word, their environment and their reality, along with that kind of psychological mind twisting that I think is what most people associate with gaslighting. But I think it's like people's psychology is just twisted. It's like they're not necessarily trying to twist yours. They're just doing their own version of the twist. And we all are, right? And sometimes our twists feel really, really out of sync with other people's twists. And that can feel like we're not living in the same reality. And that can even feel like someone's messing with your reality or trying to mess with your mind intentionally. I think most people are not intentionally trying to mess with each other's minds. Sometimes they are, and in which case that's completely out of bounds behavior, in my opinion. But I think the point you're making is a really solid one, that people are generally acting in their own self-interest and survival interest. And that can take many forms and many layers, through psychology, through history, through experience, through trauma, and through the belief system, right? This whole topic of gaslighting,
which is also related to knowledge, right?
Yeah. That's what I was bringing it back to. Go ahead. How do you bring it back?
So someone who is gaslighting someone else is doing so from whatever collection of cognitive distortions they have.
Yes.
Like maybe they're in black and white thinking, or maybe they're like catastrophizing, but they're really projecting that mess at you. And people being gaslit, it depends on like their ability to recognize it and remove themselves at an early enough point, right? Because if it's constant and it's steady and like you had no resilience built up beforehand, then of course you're going to be susceptible to it.
I looked up the etymology of the word distortion because of the way that you spoke it, and because we're both language nerds, you and me.
Torsion.
Yes, you spoke it in a very specific way, distortion, and it was the first time that like triggered in my mind those two words together that make up that word. And so the literal, I guess, Latin meaning of the word is to completely twist, or to be completely twisted, which I thought was interesting.
Yes. And the word wrong comes from rung.
Huh.
So it's like also twisted.
I did not know that.
And when we think of our toroidal fields, when they're flowing and happy and healthy, they don't have that distortion. But if there's a torsion in it, it's because your consciousness is being pulled in two directions and hasn't accepted one as your reality yet. So when we feel like knots in our body or twisting in our body, which is reflective of our thought patterns, then we can look at where there's a distortion. So it's like believing in two different things that are opposing and like not processing it out. And that's usually what happens when people like, if you have an idea of like, oh, I'm supposed to be a good person, but I'm doing this thing that is, I was taught makes a bad person.
Oh, yeah, because sometimes I feel like I'm being gaslighted when people are reflecting to me like, oh, Vision, like, yeah, you may have this complaint, or you are, you're looking at things in a certain way that are not satisfactory to you. And yet, what is it in you, or what is it about you that's calling this forth into the world? It's like, man, don't gaslight me. But like, to your point, there's more than one truth that can be present simultaneously. It can be true that, yes, there is some unconscious part of me, as you said, that has an existential kink, or that has forgotten, that is playing hide and seek with the knowledge of, I knew how this was going to play out. I did in fact choose this. Like, if I really think of it in a cause and effect sort of way, moment to moment to moment to moment, I now find myself here. And I did have an opportunity to make choices all along the way. There is a sense in which I'm absolutely and very groundedly creating my reality in that sense. And there's also something energetic, law of attraction wise, psychological, self-fulfilling prophecy, and all sorts of things like that that are playing into it as well. And I think here's the leap, or here's the paradox. The way to hold the paradox is, and you are also doing that. And everyone else and everything else is also doing that. So that's kind of where we get to this like co-creation dream of the planet. I'm not a product of my circumstances, but I'm also not entirely a product of my choices. It's both, right? It's both and?
Yes, and.
Yeah.
It's, again, paradox, because all things exist, so accepting that things are going to be both ways most often is pretty nice to hold in the body if you just stop arguing with yourself and you're like, you know what? All things are true. And then that goes to when people come to you and say, hey, Vision, here's a note. You get to then observe and be like, do I agree with this? Do I desire to, is this reflecting something to me that I already have been hating myself for and desire to shift? And then, like, what does that look like as far as like, is there a way I would prefer to actually handle this? Did I handle that in the way I preferred to at the time? Okay. Yes, I did. Wonderful. Then that's what that is. Am I open to another way that I want to respond to something? Oh, actually, I do want to learn more about that. That is actually a concern I've been having. So this is why my reality reflected that to me, and that's okay too. So it's like very much like, what feels best for you? Does it feel best for you to look at the situation and revise it and say, you know what, actually, they get to receive whatever consciousness they get to receive to have clarity and feel good about that in their body? And I think that that's an intent thing too. It's like very much, were you coming from a pure place or were you coming from a distortion? And then having that checks and balances to drive your action forward. Because if it was coming from a pure place, great. Then there was just an external projection based off of your past holdings, what you were holding previously from your energy. And you get to experience it now so that you can choose to either opt in or opt out. You get to, like, a little pop up came up on the screen and you're like, do you want to buy into this? Do you want to continue to buy into this? No, I don't. Okay, great. Or like, yes, actually, I do want to change this thing about myself. I've been meaning to get to that.
Where does reason fall in all of this? Knowledge, wisdom, and information talk. Like, I'm over here. I'm trying to process. Like, I'm building a formula, and it's starting to make a little bit of sense. Like, okay, you can't really have knowledge without at least information and experience. Okay, great. Information plus experience equals knowledge. It seems to me you can't have wisdom without knowledge. That's a prerequisite. But is there anything else that is required, or is wisdom just merely the result of a compounding set of knowledge? Is there a critical mass of knowledge that suddenly becomes wisdom? Or is it knowledge plus more experience? Or that's where like this other component pops into my mind, which is, okay, well, what about the actual like processing component of the intellect or of the mental experience of psychology? Is wisdom potentially knowledge plus reason?
So when you say reason, what I think of is, well, people can find a reason to support anything they desire, right? So like a fire and brimstone preacher, their reason or their reasoning is they don't want people to go to hell. They're trying to prevent this great tragedy that they're projecting. And that's informing their decisions. So that is their body of knowledge, their body of wisdom is operating from that place. But that reason doesn't mean that it's actually reasonable or that there is a good reason for it. I mean, well, good reason would be because that person was brainwashed and traumatized. But it doesn't make it something that I want to repeat for myself in my experience.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think reason, as I like the way I'm thinking of it or understanding reason
Yeah,
is
clarify that.
and I'm gonna step away and get my copy of the OED real quick and look it up in just a moment. But like, I'm just thinking of reason as that faculty of logical information processing, or that like, to me, it's a neutral capability, but to your point, it can be good or bad. Like, we can have good reasoning or we can have faulty reasoning. It's almost like a computer,
Right.
computer processor. It's like it's a series of logic gates that information can flow through and get transformed from one thing to another. But based on the instruction set, it's garbage in, garbage out. Does that make sense? So I'm saying that, like, if like we think of a non-reasoning creature, a creature that doesn't really think new thoughts for itself, that it just assimilates information, it assimilates experience, it may produce knowledge, which is like a synthesis of those things that includes understanding or what we might call meaning making, but it's not doing anything with it. And I think we're coming back around to like AI somehow in this, like, does AI has knowledge, but it's not, at least in what I've experienced, demonstrating a lot of wisdom. but there's some missing component there that I'm wondering if that is reason. And not reason in the sense of having good reasons for things, but reason in the sense of processing information in a reliable way to construct new thoughts. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say.
So I looked up the etymology.
Yeah.
And it's from the Proto-Indo-European root re, meaning to reason, to count.
Oh my
So
gosh.
count. So, and then it also mentioned the word consider.
Huh.
So it's a course, matter, subject, language, speech, thought, opinion, from also from Latin rationem, ratio.
Right.
So to count and also to consider. Do you think wisdom is the synthesis of the knowledges that accumulate? So once you are able to consider and count and take account of things, and you observe these various ways things have happened, does that conglomerate become wisdom?
Possibly, but what I'm thinking is, okay, once again, back to the computer analogy. If I just keep putting more and more and more data on a hard drive, but the hard drive is just sitting there in a
Right.
drawer or on a desk, or maybe even connected to a power supply and just spinning, but not, what's missing is the, well, as you said, application of that knowledge. We even call a computer program an application, or an app for short. So it's like, what's the program that takes the knowledge and utilizes it in some way? And so, like, for me, that ratio, rational, reasoning function or faculty is like the constructor. It's like the thing that actually produces thought, whereas knowledge is sort of the results of that production. It's an enriched form of information, perhaps. And may I, while you think about that, may I run and get my book?
Yes.
Be right back. Okay. While I open the book, do you have any responses to what I just said?
Oh, well, where I was going to go with this is we're Homo sapiens sapiens. Homo sapien, meaning wise man. We're the wise men. And I think that this happened with whatever spark of consciousness people were receiving to actually be able to reason, to perceive of visions or knowledge, or some, modern people call it downloads, and actually synthesize coherence from that. Like, that wisdom is taking the information and actually understanding what it means and how to apply it, versus seeing some things in your mind and thinking that you're crazy. And so it would be context. It would be that wisdom of like taking this and being like, oh, I recognize that this is consciousness. How do I want to observe/direct this? Yeah, I still think that wisdom is the application of knowledge. Because like you have information, then you have experiences, you have some knowledge, and then you have more experiences, and then you have wisdom. And something also that came up was the body's wisdom. So like if you have an avoidance response to a stimulus, that is your body's wisdom in trying to protect you. But that doesn't make it really wise or helpful at a certain point, right? Because then the context changes. So then reason can come in and say, oh, well, I'm in a different situation than I was when I was younger. So now I get to discover a different response pattern.
Yes.
So that
Yes. Go ahead.
reason and wisdom, it's like you have knowledge, and it gets to your wisdom, and your reasoning is your ability to look at it and decide if it still applies in that situation or if it's obsolete.
Yeah. Okay, I've got an amazingly cool definition right here in my Oxford English Dictionary, second edition from 1989. This is volume 8, which is Que Madero to Rover. And I'm on the page for reason. And before I speak it, I want to respond to what you just said, which is there's something about wisdom, which has to do with right, correct, appropriate, good. There's something is so it's like wisdom is the application of knowledge to the good. Is
Ooh.
that landing for you?
Yeah,
It,
and
mhm.
it's there's not a distortion, right?
It's the
Like
untorsion. It's the retorsion. Yeah. So here's what I got for there's so much, it's a huge definition. This is like love. This is like one of those multi-page deals in the OED for reason. And there's so much about it, like what you found, that has to do with counting or accounting. There's also connections to logic, connections to, this is interesting, a fact, event, or thing not dependent on human agency. That's interesting. So there's like some ideas about like objectivity, not
interesting.
dependent on what humans think, but just it is. But then I got to this one here. This is like, I think, spot on the target of where our minds are going. That intellectual power or faculty, usually regarded as characteristic of mankind, but sometimes also attributed in a certain degree to the lower animals, which is ordinarily employed in adapting thought or action to some end, the guiding principle of the human mind in the process of thinking. That is a good definition, I think.
Yeah. Can you send that to me later?
I would love to. But this, especially this, the last part of the sentence, the guiding principle of the human mind in the process of thinking. That's about nailed it.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Outstanding.
Because think about that word principle. A principle is the head or the leader
Right.
of the organism. Yeah.
Yes.
That's so good. Huh. There's also various mystical or transcendental uses. In the Kantian transcendental philosophy, reason is the power by which first principles are grasped a priori as distinguished from understanding, which is exactly like kind of where I was, when I was like, if knowledge equals understanding, reason in this definition is the power by which you grasp those principles without needing to understand them. And that there's something very interesting there that connects it back to intuition.
Mm-hmm. Continue with that with the intuition.
Okay. Well, the why I'm saying that, and interesting because we're in the dictionary on reason and not wisdom. But I was also thinking earlier that there's another form of wisdom that we, at least that we commonly refer to, which has absolutely nothing to do with knowledge or experience or information or anything like that. It's quite the contrary. It's like this wisdom that somehow comes from within ourselves or from somewhere else that we can't even define, that we call instinct or intuition,
Mm-hmm.
but we also refer to as a kind of wisdom, like a kind of inner wisdom.
Right. Yeah. I love this because this is part of what I do is teach people to connect with their inner voice to receive the voice of wisdom. So from my experience, it's the conscious energy selection. So when I'm doing an energy reading or I'm channeling, I always set my intention. I tune in for the highest love, wisdom, and joy. So if I'm going to read someone, I say like, okay, what can I tell this person for the highest love, wisdom, and joy? Because I don't want to transmit anything else. I don't think there's a point to it. I think that, sometimes people will want to fearmonger or just might read from something, any source of energy that isn't coming from an undistorted place. Like you'll see this a lot in like, if someone's giving someone a tarot reading and they're like, oh, men are trash or like whatever they're saying, it's like that is a distortion. It's not true. And if you say that, you're going to continually experience things that are going to support that story. So then I'm like, if I'm going to transmit any information to someone, it's going to be from a pure source of wisdom. So I just tap into the frequency of it. In consciousness, all things are available. If you want to connect with any consciousness, living, dead parallel reality, you get to do that. That's wisdom.
Well, that's why I came to you, Rosemarie, is for the wisdom. Why? So tell me more wisdom. Why is it the case that if we fixate on whatever is latent in our belief system that we may vocalize or sub-vocalize internally, repeat to ourselves through our internal monologue, or even speak it out loud to ourselves or other people, we will experience more of that. So if I go through the world saying women are untrustworthy, or men are aggressive, or whatever these definitions are, or these belief structures are, why does that produce more of itself? Why? And I'm asking like from a truly like a theoretical perspective, what do you think the mechanism is of that? And you said something about energy.
Right. So imagine a waveform, just a pretty little sine or cosine wave. If you have a thought in resonance with that, it's in phase with that. Let's say for cleanliness, they have the same amplitudes. The height of the wave is exactly the same. So you have this one that exists, and then you have this other wave. And let's say that this wave is your baseline. And then this other wave is an experience that you get to experience again in your life because you're resonant with it. And then when you have this experience overlay on you, what happens to the amplitudes of the waves? They grow. They'll double in size because they're the same. So the signal, the experience, the consciousness, the energy is stronger in that moment. And experiencing it again, reaffirming that belief of saying, see, this is always true because I'm experiencing it again. It's simply one of the games of consciousness to wake you up to your ability to create. So until you choose, actually, I'm not going to create that anymore. Actually, I'm choosing to have the experience of trustworthy women, really wonderful, beautiful relationships, partnership within myself. I'm going to hold that energy and frequency in myself so that the field I am resonant with shows me the match to that. And that way, too, when you have a wave that's out of phase, it's not going to double the amplitude, right? It'll cancel it out. If it's like offset in some sort of way, it might make it a little disjointed, but it's not going to strengthen that signal. And to that end, neutralizing that signal. When you choose to start emitting a waveform that is different in resonance, different in frequency, and that becomes your dominant assumption, your dominant thought, your dominant emission, you get to experience what it is that you're putting out. That is simply being in phase or out of phase. It's like a radio station. You're not going to listen to 1049 if your dial is set to 95.5. So if you keep hearing 95.5 and you're like, oh man, I really want 1049, you got to turn the dial.
Right. And it would be kind of hilarious for someone to be complaining about, I can't believe why this radio just keeps playing classic rock music all day, every day. I'm telling you, radios just play classic rock. That's just what they do. And like somebody else has their dial set to something different. And they're like, okay, it's not my experience.
Don't do that.
Yeah, that's really not how mine works, but okay. But yeah, that's so helpful. Like, I love the way you explain things, Rosemarie. Like, it really helps to me, and I think probably for a lot of people, to have some of these kind of, I don't want to say cliches, but these common wisdom, these wisdom sayings or phrases that come to us like, hey, your thoughts create your reality. And if you speak it into existence, like if whatever you expect, you will receive more of, right? Like all of these different things that we say. But for me anyway, it really helps to ground me and to have something to attach to that my mind can understand. And I guess now that means I have knowledge in a way, right? It's like, oh, I have experienced this, but now you've given me information that I can synthesize with that experience. And now I have something like understanding, which is like, oh, okay, I have a mechanism for this. I am both broadcasting and receiving on this frequency. And just like radio waves through the atmosphere, there's a multitude, an infinite number of frequencies actually available. But what I am choosing to tune into is, of course, what I will receive, what I will hear from my radio.
Exactly. Thank you for appreciating that analogy.
I very much appreciate it. You said something earlier. I witnessed the rise of humans in consciousness. I want to pick that one apart. Are you game?
Go for it. Yeah, totally.
Why rise? I'm just questioning all assumptions today. Why rise? Like we have an assumption that we want to rise, or that's the direction of progress. Why?
So it's very funny. That was how it came through yesterday, and I wrote that down. And as I was writing it, I just wrote exactly what I heard and felt. And I was thinking about rose versus rise, right? Like, or even saying like consciousness has risen. But I was thinking about, for that, what I was visually seeing is the transition that we get to witness in the unfolding of the consciousness that is available right now is that shift. It's the shift of humans from the old paradigms that we were taught and raised with to that recognition and that remembrance. So I'm here witnessing the rise of humans in consciousness, meaning the energy rising up the spine. It's the cerebral spinal fluid like flowing up and flooding the brain and giving more information and availability for things. It's the rising of people in awareness to remember, oh, I get to create my reality. Oh, actually, let's all create a world that benefits all of us and is lovely. It's the rising consciousness to, oh, my thoughts affect my biology. I get to heal my body with my mind. It's a rise in consciousness versus,
Why do we have a bias to rising? Why do we not say with joy, I witness the sinking of humans in consciousness? That's all I'm curious about. It's like we've got this orientation to things, hierarchically speaking, right? Up, down, high, low. What do you think about that?
I think that that's probably landscape related.
Because we live on a planet.
Yeah. So it's like
Yeah.
things like, oh, you look at a mountain far away and you're like, wow, that mountain rose.
Uh-huh.
Or you look at plants growing up out of the ground.
Right.
And then so if I would say sink into joy, which I have said before, it's like what I'm saying is retreat into the joy within your body and like find it there and allow it to flow through. And the visual I get of like watching humans rise in consciousness is almost like someone kind of holding their knees to their chest and sitting on the ground, and then they have that spark of remembrance, and then they stand up. So it's like it's that movement from being like that retreated within self, disconnected, to connection and remembrance. And so rise in this sense, it could have been any word. I like that that was the choice of word, and then you are asking about it now.
I just want to say I love the sentence. It fills me with joy. It's inspiring to me. I don't inherently question it until I just start getting really, really curious about my own language. That's the
Oh
only
no,
thing.
I
Yeah.
agree in that even as I wrote it, I wanted it to be clear. I'm witnessing the evolution and expansion of consciousness, the coming to awareness of self that we are all experiencing right now, versus like a descent in consciousness would be retreating into oneself and looking at a singular aspect.
Mm.
So like Inanna's journey through the underworld, looking at the interactions that you face in your subconscious and your psyche, looking at like what societal programming you came from so that you then change it. And this doesn't have to happen, like people don't need to nitpick their whole existence. You get to shift and have it be easy. But really, as things come up, addressing them and recognizing like, okay, so where did I fall in consciousness last time? Where I fell in consciousness or where I fell unconscious was believing that something negative about myself, perhaps. So then the rise in consciousness is to remember that we're all doing our best. And
Yeah.
we're all here and we're going to help each other. And it gets to be beautiful.
That's helpful. Yeah. So like rise and descent is a metaphor for expand, contract,
Mhm.
or grow more complex versus retract into simplicity or something along those lines. But yeah, it's just a metaphor that makes sense to us as humans because there is something that feels naturally hopeful and optimistic, growth oriented, as you say, about upward motion because of this planet that we live on and the terrain and what it's like to climb a mountain and how that feels and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because it just sort of inspecting with curiosity those kind of natural conventions, because I think you and I both believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we both believe that we're such language nerds because we ascribe a lot of importance to how much the words that we choose and what we think those words means structures our actual thoughts. And then, of course, from there, as we've just covered, if our thoughts are creating our reality, or at least setting our expectations for reality, that's super important. So I just am getting more and more naturally curious about, like, oh, okay, well, rise versus fall. Why? Is that a cultural convention? Are there other cultures that might think about it differently? If they did, would they think wildly differently or perceive reality wildly differently just because of the way they structure their thoughts? I'll give you an example. I was watching a video. I found this YouTube channel called The Art of Storytelling, which it's been a really nice little, sometimes dinner time treat for me. These little 20, 30-minute videos of dissecting some specific piece of movies or TV or something, but with a really interesting, thoughtful analysis of the story structure of things. And in one of these videos, as an example of a point, I learned that there's a culture, I think in South America or Mexico, that has a completely different framing of past and future.
Is it the Hopi?
It might be the Hopi. Yeah. Yeah. How they say forward to the past and back to the future. You know
Hmm.
that you've heard this before.
Yes. I think about this all the time.
That's so fascinating, right?
When you said rise in consciousness, my brain automatically was thinking, I was like, yeah, what if like it's like go left
Yeah,
in consciousness
right. Yeah.
to
It's
the left? It's like, oh no, wisdom is over there, just like 20 paces to the right.
I witnessed the clockwise of humans and consciousness, right? It's like to a certain degree, it's somewhat arbitrary and interesting, but we just naturally assume rise is good and lower is less good, right?
And I even thought about books, pages. Like, we start at the top of the page with English and we go down. But in other languages, they'll start at the bottom and go up, or they'll have in columns instead of left to right. So it's very much spatially how we've been trained to process.
Yeah.
So we're gonna perceive of things differently. I think that the not danger, but consideration is to recognize that rising consciousness is not intended as like a hierarchical thing.
Okay.
It's not intended as like this is better. It's like this is more in alignment with what I desire to witness in reality. That's what I'll say.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, again, as long as we can both just acknowledge and appreciate it as a metaphor, you know, and just kind of like I think for me the recognition is like it is a little arbitrary, but it's like what
So arbitrary.
it's like what meaning, but it's the meaning that we
Much
have.
purple of consciousness.
But if purple really meant something, right, that it would be perfect. That like it is perfect because of what rise and fall means to us as our own cultural conventions, I think. Because I could imagine, like, okay, taking the Hopi situation. By the way, when you think about it, the way the Hopi think about past and future actually makes more sense in
Yeah.
a certain respect
Yeah.
than the way that we think about it, because you can see the past, right? So walking backwards into the future is a lot more sensible because you don't know where you're going, and like you can't see it before you get there. But once you've been there, now you know what it is. So it's like, yeah, why do we walk forward to the future and away from the past? I don't know. But so you could imagine, like, in a different cultural context or just with a different thought process, the idea of like sinking down into the earth, like being enfolded, enveloped, embraced, and wombed in Mother Earth, you could imagine that, a mental model around that, that's like, that's the preferable thing. Like, I wouldn't want to go up into the sky and be further and further alienated from the giver of life. Like, I'm just making stuff up on the fly, but I'm just saying it could be the other way around and make more sense in a way sometimes, you know?
Yeah. So perhaps expansion of consciousness, or but I like the way I wrote it simply because it got my mind to do the same thing too. I was like, okay, rise, what do we mean by that?
Mm-hmm.
Like when now I'm thinking about bread dough.
Mm.
Just
Mm-hmm.
things expand, things transform state.
I witnessed
Um,
the leavening of humans in consciousness.
oh my God. You know what? Collapsing the singularity into one point. In the rise in consciousness, there then is that implication that there was a choice of the direction to go.
Yeah.
Once someone decided the direction that they desire to experience in their reality, then it expands from that point, but it doesn't come without that decision.
There's another word in this sentence that I think is really interesting, which may surprise you, and that word is in. I witnessed the rise of humans in consciousness.
In consciousness.
And there's a different, like, depending on where you want to put the punctuation or the pause, it can be read as I witnessed the rise of humans in consciousness, or it could be I witnessed the rise of humans in consciousness. Do you see what I'm saying?
So the way I wrote it is I witnessed the rise of humans dash, and
Yes.
it's a long dash. So I guess, is that technically an M dash? I just like, when you're writing on an actual page and it's just a long ass dash,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Anyway, I witnessed the rise of humans dash in consciousness.
Yeah. Well, I think so. It's sort of like eats, shoots, and leaves situation, right? It could be the humans that are rising, or it could be the consciousness that is rising, depending on how you look at it.
So I witnessed the rise of humans. And so I put in consciousness, I put the dash there specifically because it's like, well, from other perspectives, surely humans have risen before. But what have they risen in?
Yeah.
In strife, in competition, through war. Right? The rising of humans in consciousness, when I'm specifically talking about this, I'm talking about the wisdom of recognizing we get to take care of each other, like at a very physical base level, making sure everyone's needs are taken care of. Everyone has food, water, shelter, and then gets to connect with their soul, their God consciousness. By the way, I'm not religious. I use the word God as like a universal force, the consciousness of all things. So the rise of that, the rise of the wisdom of, oh, I'm connected to my soul. My soul is showing me exactly like how to live my highest joy. And I believe that if it's the highest joy, that means it's for the joy of all, because you're not going to have a highest joy that harms someone.
Mm-hmm.
So when I say rise of humans in consciousness, I mean that remembrance that we get to choose our governing force as wisdom. We get to choose to move from the wellness of all beings. We get to choose to move from, well, consciousness.
We got a lot of juice for the squeeze of that little sentence, eh? That's a good one. What is it? Do you mind if I switch topics real quick? I want to ask you, because you've alluded to it a few times, but I just would love to get an update from you on your gifts. Like I don't like this question, but you'll understand what I mean when I ask it. Like, what do you do? What do you offer? What is your transformational service?
I guide people in tuning into specific energy frequencies. so that they can hold that and have their body, their consciousness, their system take it up as one of their base notes, like one of the base threads in their being, in a nutshell. So I'll do this in several ways. There's guided meditations, experientially feeling and choosing what they desire to, through mental programming. So the affirmations are just thoughts. It's the affirmative. It's what you're saying yes to. So what you're choosing to believe as your truth, what you're choosing to hold. And that, of course, sends cascades through the body of upregulating or downregulating various things. Your breathing slows down, you become more relaxed, your body can repair, etc. I also do sonic alchemy, so I will sing and vocalize without words, which as a wordy person, it's really, really nice because the frequencies themselves open people up to receiving other wisdom. So lots of people in these sessions will receive really varied visions. It's kind of like a vision quest, but just all that is happening is I'm singing. People also tend to have a lot of somatic release from that because there's a very deep safety in people vocalizing. Birds don't sing when there's danger around, and humans also stop singing, stop making noises, shrink themselves when there's scary things around.
Mm-hmm.
So holding the space of just safety to allow people to meet that. One of the offerings I have right now, an actual offering, is I have a 3-month journey that I take people on to have them deeply support their body, deeply nourish their body to release and relax, create safety, change their mindset to whatever their preference is, get rid of any programming, resolve any open emotional loops that are siphoning energy, that are stressful, that are causing differences in behavior, and then being in tune with your soul voice so that you can bring your soul offering into reality. Whatever it is that your soul is calling you to do, take care of body, get your mind on board, and then just listen and feel and bring it through in easy, actionable steps.
Beautiful. What space do I wish to occupy in the divine mind? You were saying that, you said that phrase in the context of this idea of selecting our preferred reality, or
Right.
this is like tuning our radio frequency, right? To
Yeah.
what is, can you, like, I want to unpack some of those words and that meaning there. What space do I wish to occupy in the divine mind? Can you expand that a little bit for me?
Sure. As a base fact, to have this make any sense, I will state my base fact is that all things exist. All things exist somewhere in reality, whether it's a parallel reality, alternate dimension, whatever. Everything exists. Therefore, Harry Potter has been lived by actual people somewhere. Somewhere that happened. So, what space do I wish to occupy in the divine mind? What I mean by that, and the visual I get with it, is imagine your consciousness is like a flashlight, and you are continually shining that flashlight spotlight on different scenes in your memory, in your witnessing, in your, even if it's subconscious, it's playing somewhere, right? There's an image attached to it somewhere, whether or not you physically perceive of it. Where we shine the light of our consciousness, what we're putting a spotlight on is then what we tend to get more of through the, principles of increase and resonance and amplification. What part do I wish to occupy in the divine mind? If everything is available to me, I want to witness the reality where everyone is thriving and healthy and living from their soul, because that's my experience and it feels really good. So then I have a choice. What am I going to highlight and shine a spotlight on in my divine mind? And the word coming is attention. A while ago, I heard someone mention attention as like at tension. Imagine it's like you're holding a rope on something. You're holding it at tension in your being. And that's exactly the same as shining a spotlight on it. You're putting the spotlight on it, continually pulling up the file and saying, this is my reality. Okay, what happens if we change the scene? What happens if we change the internal dialogue, the visual images, the feelings available to you? Well, I'll tell you what happens when you change it, when you truly and consistently change it. Your external reality changes. People treat you differently. You get different words reflected to you. Random wonderful things show up. And this is truly the power of that which is manifested into reality, consciousness which is manifested into reality. And it's because of what we're focusing on. Now, people might say like, oh, well, you can imagine tons of horrible things and like they'll never happen. And it's like, great, that wasn't what you wanted to happen anyway. So really like letting yourself observe that as reality, as a potential reality. I'm not telling everyone who hears this to believe it. I'm saying I've experimented with it for many years. I have hundreds, if not thousands of touch points that reinforce my experience because I have experienced it so many times. When I direct my consciousness, when I change my internal story, my external changes every time. And it's very much like you're not going to change your face. You're not going to change your makeup by wiping your mirror. You're not going to interfere in the outside to change something that is an internal point of consciousness that you're holding. And then we go back to words like moment, one moment, right? But also a moment in engineering.
What's a moment in engineering?
A quantity that measures a force's tendency to cause rotation around an axis or a point, often called torque.
Oh, okay.
So a moment in static engineering, so meaning like there's no moving parts, will predict rotational effects and stresses. So it's like one moment to the next, right? Then that moment, who you are in one moment, meaning 1 second, but also who you are in a moment changes your orientation. It changes the direction that you move in. So it's important to remember we're choosing moment by moment. The space I occupy in the divine mind is what I choose in each moment. It is the now.
What is a moment in time? Like you just said, it's synonymous with a second, but that's not right. Like,
well, I view a second as you have the first witnessing of a thing, and then the second is that continuation of that awareness over a period of time, which we have determined to be a second.
Oh, that's hilarious. The word second. I never even thought of that before.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it called a second?
Because it's the second.
Yeah. It's like first is the moment, and then everything after that is the second. Yeah.
Yeah. Moment
Wild.
from movere to, or from you to push away. So to move, to push away. Interesting. So,
right.
So then we say like, okay, a moment is like, what are we projecting out of us? And lots of like, you'll hear terms like law of assumption. I really like calling it law of assumption because it's like what we assume is what we experience. But I really like law of emittance, which I made up.
Versus law of attraction.
Yeah. So
I
law
like
of
that
attraction
too.
implies that something outside of you is coming to you versus recognizing you're changing your internal state.
Right. And it also implies like you're pulling it toward you.
Right. And
I like law of assumption, but tell me more about law of emittance. That flips the frame around altogether.
yeah, law of assumption, I like that. It's great. You should definitely look it up and like look at, because it's very much, it's more empowered. It's more conscious, I think, that framework versus like pulling something external to you. I'm changing my internals. I call it law of emittance or law of emission, basically just because like we emit, we're emitting it. And this is just a little nerdy thing where I noticed the word emit mirrored is time.
Time. Yeah.
So that's why I named my third book Emit Time Now One, because now is the moment. You mirror that, it's WON. So it's like you win in each moment. When I consider it emittance, then I'm consciously emitting the scenes. I'm emitting the light. I'm emitting the words that I desire to witness reflected back to me through time.
And a love emission sounds pretty sexy, if I say so myself.
Yeah.
Which ties back to Eros, which is the divine force of creation through our desire, that source energy that, in fact, powers our intentional evolution, that our intentional evolution is merely the expression of our desire through our unique position or perspective in the divine mind. But that's what I wanted to I wanted to drill more into that phrase, divine mind. And what really piqued my curiosity about it is the space. So like we've been talking a lot about time and moments, and now like by the way, my brain has completely exploded about the concept of a moment, and I'm gonna have to pick up the pieces after we get off the phone. But at any rate, but you said the space I wish to occupy in the divine mind. What's the divine mind, and how does it have spaces?
Ooh, okay. So this is my cosmology or my understanding and witnessing of the universe is all things exist, all things are one. Consciousness is really the only thing exists. Consciousness is creating every atom. It is made up of consciousness. It is only the consciousness of itself, though, right? So the consciousness that is an atom is not the same as the consciousness of a human person. An atom only needs to, whatever vibe slash energy is a singular charge, or however, for a hydrogen atom. The divine mind would be the energetics that come before the divine body, which would be the whole universe being the divine body, the projection of that reality. So the divine mind, what do I desire to occupy in the divine mind in the existence of all things is who do I desire to be as the observer? What do I desire to observe? What do I desire to be witnessing and party to?
Like what position would I like to assume with my locus of awareness? So there is like a spatial, obviously it's metaphorical, but there is like a spatial kind of conception to it of like, I can take whatever position within this creation that I would like, but it's a matter of sort of assuming a perspective. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah. So what space do I desire? I'll tell you specifically what space do I desire to occupy in the divine mind? Oh, I desire to witness the reality where we're all working together and living from our soul, our beautiful wisdom and source energy, which is not harming or causing distortion, living in balance with the earth, etc. So that's the area of the divine mind I wish to occupy. And it's funny because I wrote that sentence yesterday. I hadn't written that sentence before. Never before did I write occupy what space do I desire to occupy in the divine mind. But I guess I was prepping for this.
Yeah. Nice. Cool. Okay, well, tell me a little bit, like, we've got a little, I have a little bit more time. I know that we're going a little bit long, but if you still have a few more minutes, I'd love for you to tell me more about this mind-body connection that you've been exploring, how our thoughts
I love it.
recreate our biology, or how our thoughts intentionally evolve our actual physical being.
Right. So I began observing this back in college. I definitely, I was having an experience of panic attacks. And so I got curious about my mind and learned some cognitive distortions I had that were very black and white and leading to my body thinking that I was in danger, right? So saying sometimes it's like, I have to get this done creates a psychological imperative. That means if I don't get this done, I will die. So my body was panicking in reaction to that. Fast forward a few years later, I hadn't resolved that at the root, and I kept ending up more and more injured. And then I'd be injured, and instead of healing completely, that program that was still running was, I have to get up and do something. I have to do something. I can't do nothing. So, and you can even hear in the cadence of the voice that it was recorded in, right? It was like, I have to do this. It's like, it's pushy. It's a pushing energy, creating force, creating tension, distortion. So when I got to the point where I was like, I'd been in some car accidents, I was very injured, and I couldn't move. So all I could do was observe my body and mind. And I had gotten to the point where I couldn't listen to any more podcasts. I couldn't watch videos because of the way my neck had to be angled. And I got tired of podcasts. So then I was just with my silence, and I realized I'm holding my body so tight right now. I'm so tense, and I'm just laying in my bed. I should be relaxed, but I was in that state, that hyper tense state. And so I said, okay, let me pull up a meditation on YouTube and just start, even if I don't get through it, simply having the person there with me, it'll surely do something. So I started breathing and relaxing my body to the best that I could. And I did a progressive muscle relaxation, I believe, or a chakra meditation. And my body felt more relaxed. And then I witnessed the thought, I have to do something, come in, and my body tensed up immediately. It was like a very much, okay, I had the thought and my body immediately like snapped around it. And that was when my biology, psychology, neuroscience, physics, chemistry, all of those courses, plus my energy awareness, all overlaid as if looking at the clear sheets on a projector. They all overlaid to create a very clear picture. Okay, I have this thought. This thought is sending information to my body. My body is reacting to this thought by tensing, trying to protect. So then I got to do the fun excavation of, okay, when was the first time I remember hearing this? Oh, from my parents. Okay, great. So it's passed to me through verbal components as well as somatic components, witnessing them always getting up if they would sit down to rest, right? And then looking at that, okay, they were passed that story from somewhere. At some point in the lineage, there was utility for it. At some point, that pattern saved someone from some sort of threat, or so they perceived, and so they decided to make it part of their personality, their personal reality. Recognizing that my body reacted to this thought in this way, my body reacts to other thoughts in other ways, like, a friend texting you and a big smile coming on your face, or driving with the windows down and feeling air blow on you during the summer. Our thoughts inform us, or inform our bodies how to respond. Either tense, stress, danger, 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 or relaxed, connected, happy, peaceful. When you look at the actual biology of it, our DNA has all these beautiful little genes that get to be expressed or not expressed. When people experience stressors, when people experience trauma, certain of those genes can get turned off or on. And that can also be passed to following generations, right? So it could be that, you had, let's say you experienced a trauma and what gets turned on is inflammation. There's a site where it's like, if this gets methylated, you're going to have inflammation because it's just telling your body to do that. How you get to then reverse it is by creating safety, resolving whatever energy is left from that trauma loop, right? Like a bunny rabbit would shake. Maybe you need to shake, maybe you need to reconsider, re-observe that memory, but through a lens of a different awareness and perspective. Maybe you need to replay the memory in a way that you create what happened in the memory to give your body that peace and resolution. And then your being, your mind will reconsolidate that memory, so it's no longer running it through that filter. So when we change gene expression through regulation, through feeling good in our bodies, then suddenly we don't have this little switch in our beings that is saying, oh no, actually avoid this thing because that means danger. When we have the resilience to have that off, suddenly we're more open. We're like, oh, actually, this stimulus didn't even get read by my body as a threat. Did that answer your question?
Yeah. You more than answered it. Like that's amazing. That's so much food for thought. No pun intended. The way I'm seeing that is something that I would like to sit and think about, and we could probably have a whole nother conversation that like starts there and like really dives into psychosomatics, the body keeps the score and the body mind connection, and yeah, epigenetics, like psychological, like the psychotecture of epigenetics. Like, wow, it's a very rich topic. So now that we've taken this little journey together, Rosemary, as always, I want to bring it back full circle and just ask you kind of a closing, for a closing thought. Well, now that we've explored, what do you think about knowledge?
Something that a line that I walk is I have a desire to explain things scientifically without making science the end all be all. So sometimes people looking at science and being like, well, here's the data, here's the science. This is true because biology says so. Versus looking at it like, no, this is, and we can observe it through a biological lens to witness what's occurring on that level.
Right.
So causation, cause and effect again, with knowledge is like, okay, well, to what end are we moving?
Yeah, I love that. That feels like a really important point. I'm glad you brought that in as part of our kind of closing thoughts here, which is the important piece that I'm taking from what you said is that knowledge, all knowledge, is relative to the dimension that knowledge is applied to,
Yeah.
right? So it's like just looking at all of the different layers, levels, dimensions of reality. We can have knowledge in one domain or one field, let's say biology, which could represent facts, information, even truth, we might say. But that knowledge may only work within that scope or within that perspective. But what's really exciting is like the last piece that we kind of explored with that psychosomatic or psychobiological connection. I think things are starting to become really, really interesting as we become more integral in our consciousness and in our thought process to notice how knowledge and then wisdom or application, reason in one area has reciprocal or synergistic effects and impacts in other areas that we may have previously thought of as completely separate realities. So I think we're learning more and more about the wholeness and the integrated nature of this weird experience that we call life.
I love that. Yes, witnessing just another perspective in the infinite options available to us.
Yeah. Beautiful. This was exactly as much fun as I thought it was going to be, which is a whole lot. I hope you enjoyed it too. Yeah, just thank you so much for being a part of this intentional evolution exploration with me.
My pleasure, and thank you so much for inviting me.
How can people find you if they want to learn more about what you do or get in touch with you, Rosemarie?
You can go to rosemariefrancis.com and you can see my various offerings, the emotional workbooks I have available for free, the poetry performances that I offer as well, which I do this consciousness shifting poetry that's really fun. And you can find my courses there as well. So Create Your Reality, which teaches you to shift your mindset and reprogram your being. And you can find me on Instagram at RomeWildeArts. That's RomeWildeArts. And if you want to email me, you can email me at Joy Channel Coaching. So that's JoyChannelCoaching@gmail.com.
Amazing. Thanks. I'll put all that information in the notes for the show too, so that people can find you. And I want to share with you that I gifted a copy of your quantum poetry book because you gave me several copies, and I gifted one to a friend of mine just a little while ago, like last week, and she just absolutely loves it. She's like can't stop gushing about it. So I just wanted to give you that feedback that your poetry is great. I'm a big fan also myself. So thanks once again. This was such a great conversation, Rosemarie, and I will be in touch and talk to you again soon.
Yay. Thank you, Vision. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Thanks for joining me for Intentional Evolution. If you'd like to support the show, there's a couple of ways that you can do that. One is to connect with me directly. I'd love to start a conversation with you if you're interested in any of my offers, or if you'd like to be a guest on this podcast. Visit ievolve.life, Life, and drop me a note or book a call with me to connect. Another great way to get involved is to attend one of our live events. Visit intentionalevolution.live, L-I-V-E, to see details about our upcoming and past events, register to attend an event, and gain access to our ever-growing archive of materials and resources. Also, don't forget to check the links in the episode or the show notes for ways to connect with and support our guests and contributors. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the singularity.